Well, hey, we want to take a moment, not have a call, but talk to one of our, she's more than an advisor, actually. She's our head of wealth planning, and Victoria Bogner. We've had her on many times, yeah.
Probably 3 times. 3 or 4.
Yeah, she joined us through one of our partnerships. We've talked about our partnerships in the past, and she joined us through one of our partnerships. She was CEO of an organization. Now she is our head of wealth planning, and basically make sure all the advisors have the tools that they need, the resources they need. And I think she's part of a team also when there's very complex cases. Our advisors have a team of experts, specialists on different areas. Like, here's this client with all these things going on. There might be 3 or 4 different specialists in the organization that they turn to get some additional advice on the planning. So,
and Vicky runs that.
Yeah. So,
and she's a CFP, CFA.
Et cetera. Victoria, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, it's great to be back. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
So we're digging into an interesting story today that is very common. And a lot of times we think of our clients as being older, and so they're asking us to help them with their kids. But a lot of times we also have clients that ask us to help with their parents. And that was this particular situation. We had a client
I tell you, it is so common.
Yes.
Right? And a lot of people are getting squeezed both ends. They got kids in college and they got parents that they're dealing with. And sometimes the parents have the financial assets, but aren't necessarily making the best choices or having some cognitive issues. Anyway,
That's absolutely right. So in this situation, it was a client of ours. They're in their late 50s, and their parents are in their early 80s. And so they're seeing a little bit of the handwriting on the wall to say, okay, well, while our parents do still have their wits about them, and also having the conversations of potentially, do we need to start thinking about assisted living, things of that nature, that their parents have been the classic do-it-yourselfers. This particular client, her dad has managed all of their assets, himself. But getting to the point where, and I've seen this a lot throughout my double-decade career, of parents pass away and it's an absolute jumbled mess because they didn't think ahead of what is the impact of all of my assets and how they're structured on my kids.
I talked to someone last week. The husband passed away. There was it 18 or 19 bank accounts at different banks?
Mm-hmm.
Just bank accounts. Just the bank accounts. I mean,
the bank accounts.
It makes no sense.
No, it made no sense, but
it makes things more complicated. But anyway.
So common. And so what's great is that we love working with the other generations, whether that's the kids or it's the parents. So we finally were able to have a meeting with the parents with this particular client involved, and later we were able to get the other siblings involved, which was great. But what's so interesting about these cases is that, first of all, they had a trust, actually 2, because they had set up their estate plan prior to 2011.
Okay.
So, if any listeners know this, 2011 was a pivotal year when it came to estate planning because something called portability didn't exist prior to 2011, meaning that, first of all, the estate tax exemption was very low. And if you had a spouse pass away, you didn't necessarily automatically get to use up all of their estate tax exemption. So you had to do a lot of finagling with, setting up 2 trusts and having a bypass trust and all of these different things to be able to use up the total estate tax exemption of that first spouse.
Vicky, it's interesting you bring that up. And a lot of these trusts, particularly if like you say, before 2011, and if you go back even a few years before that, the estate exemption was a million, but it was 620 years ago.
625,000.
600,000 or something.
So I've seen a lot of old trusts that mandate this bypass, just what you're talking about here, right? And so,
yep. Yes. So
if trusts are that old, they need to be revisited.
Correct. So if you've made trusts prior to 2011, please talk with an estate planner or your estate attorney. They desperately need to be updated. And it's not like, I've had people ask, well, yeah, but what would happen if you didn't? It's like, well, it's like driving a 1991 Honda Civic. It might get you there, but it depends, So
No, I
the
recall.
other
I recall dealing
Yeah.
with a client years ago. They hadn't updated their trust. There was an automatic bypass. Wasn't necessary at the time, and there wasn't
Yep.
that. We actually had to put a portion of the primary residence in it because there wasn't enough other assets to fund this.
Yeah, because you want to fund it right up to that
Wow.
exemption amount.
Right, and we had this like which is the worst kind of assets because whatever goes in that bypass trust doesn't receive that second step up basis.
Correct.
Upon death.
Yes.
Yeah.
So nowadays we have something called portability, meaning that you don't have to jump through a bunch of hoops to use up that estate tax exemption of the first spouse. And you can do things like Q-tip trusts where, if it's a blended family, you can make sure that you're using the total exemption, but you're able to have your assets go to, say, your kids if you're in a second marriage, but your spouse still gets to use distributions from those assets. So there are a lot of really cool things you can do with estate planning these days, but they're totally different than what you would do in 2010 or earlier. So that was an important component. And of course, they have kids and grandkids now that were not a part of the trust in any way, shape, or form. And this particular gentleman, bless his heart, and this is more common than you would think. So if you're a listener and you're thinking, wow, that is me, just know you're in good company. But he was a do-it-yourselfer, so he thought, well, if I want American funds, mutual funds, I'll open an account at American Funds. And if I want Vanguard, I'll open an account at Vanguard.
Oh,
And
my.
so
How many
he
accounts
had-
did he have?
Okay, you're going to fall out of your chairs. He had about 35 accounts.
Oh,
spread throughout.
Oh.
I made the comment about 18 or 19 bank accounts. This
Yeah.
is worse.
Yeah. Some of them are taxable accounts. Some of them were 401ks from employers from eons ago.
Was he missing
that
his
just-
required minimum distributions?
Well, no. So all of those I think were taken care of. But he did have, you've got your Roths, your IRAs, your taxable accounts, your old 401ks that are strewn all over the place. So as far as we could tell, RMDs were being taken care of. There were only, a couple of old 401ks and a couple of IRAs at different custodians. A lot of them were taxable accounts that were spread just all over the place. So you can imagine the 1099 nightmare this person must have had, their poor CPA. So what we did is like, okay, first things first, let's consolidate these and clean them up. Okay, so let's get them with a common custodian. We picked Fidelity, and let's just make sure all of these accounts, we just have one Roth. We have two Roths, one for each spouse, two IRAs. We'll move over the old 401ks, get those consolidated. We have, your taxable brokerage that we will put in the trust once we get that fixed, make sure the trust is funded. And that's the other component to this is, as a side note, if you have a trust, please make sure it's funded. So many times we see that you went through all of the effort to do this estate plan that's wonderful and beautiful, and then you never fund the trust.
And by
If you don't
funding
fund
it,
it's
it means you're
useless.
changing the title from, say,
Correct.
a joint to the trust, the revocable trust.
To the trust. The trust owns it,
And the
or
property.
trust is the beneficiary. Correct. You need to retitle your properties to be in the name of the trust. Right. So that is incredibly important. So first we cleaned up all of these accounts so they're just in one custodian, which is beautiful. And we upgraded them to the beautiful world of exchange traded funds. So we were able to formulate a plan to sell out of some of these mutual funds in a tax-efficient way, because he did have low-cost basis in many of them, but get them changed over to something that's way more tax-efficient, which is just the exchange-traded fund kind of structure.
Yeah, and
over
much less
mutual
expensive,
funds.
too. Yeah.
And much less expensive, yes. So the next step is going to be, okay, now that we've cleaned this up and it's going to be so much easier for your kids, let's talk about legacy, values. What do you want to see as the through line? What do you want to leave as your legacy? Because they have about, $12 million in assets. So they're not in danger of violating the estate tax, exemption. That's about $15 million in 2026 per person. So $30 million for a couple. But that's still substantial assets that you want to make sure are passed on in the way that you want to see them used. Your values are still intact. And so talking through what matters to them, And then also a very important piece of this that I think is often overlooked, and I've seen this happen more than a handful of times, is that they forget about their other assets that are family heirlooms. So just recently, actually, I had a good friend whose grandmother passed away. She had jewelry that she had inherited from her great-grandmother, grandmother, all down the line.
Mm.
And this woman who passed away had 3 daughters. And after she passed away, she never communicated who
guess
got
what?
what piece
What
of
a
jewelry.
fight.
Yep.
Guess what? They are not speaking
That's
to
right.
each other
What
anymore.
a fight. That's a fight.
Yeah. So even more important is to realize you have these family heirlooms. People care about them, and they have in their head what they're going to get. And so putting in place something that details out, this person gets this, and it can be a legally binding document.
Yeah, and you could actually take pictures of them and reference that particular item.
That is absolutely right, which is the best way to do it. But then have the conversation with your kids while you're still here to say, I'd love for this child to get this for this reason. And I'm telling you, it will save so much
And by the way, if you can't do that, then what you do is you make equivalent value of the jewelry if there's 3 children that are going to receive it, and then you actually use a lottery to actually decide who gets what pile of jewelry. And I've done this with clients. And so we were like 3 equivalent. These we believe are all the same values. 1, 2, or 3, draw straws. You get those. They can trade among themselves, but it removes the parent from actually favoring one child over the other. It is all random.
That's a great suggestion.
It's all random.
I have not heard that
Then
before.
they fight over is it straws or is it Rochambeau?
Well, that actually, but and that's why my family has never collected any family heirlooms.
There's no heirloom in my family.
Yeah.
We never got the Astor gene.
You didn't.
Let me ask you. So
sapphire brooch
it's interesting.
that, yeah.
So we talked about kind of the financial complexity here, but oftentimes people are quite private, right? So
yes.
And as we age, particularly private people, they've aged, they've got assets. Oftentimes they've never disclosed to their kids what their net worth is. How did that conversation come up? Because I'm sure a lot of listeners to this podcast have a similar situation where they don't know what the estate plan is that their parents have because their parents have been private about it, and it's not the kind of thing you really want to pry your parents about. But at some point in time, sometimes it becomes necessary. So how did this conversation come down?
This came about because the parents, being in their early 80s, they were starting to have that conversation of, if we need to put mom and dad in assisted living, then what is that going to look like? And it's necessary then to see what kind of assets do they have that could pay for this potentially.
So someone broached mom and dad and started having these conversations.
That's right. And then when they realized, holy cow, there's a lot going on here, and dad's done it pretty much himself. They were just seeing the handwriting on the wall of, if something happened to mom and dad, this is a tangled web, and we need to get this untangled while they're still here and cognitively able to think through it.
That's right.
Yeah. And Vicki, at the end of it, how did mom and dad feel about the whole process?
Well, what's really great, and I'm proselytizing my team a little bit because I love them dearly. My team is so professional, but at the same time so kind, that for these particular clients, they spoke with one of my estate planners, and by the time they left, they were hugging her and telling her how much they appreciated her, that she took the time to just sit and listen.
I heard that could
to
happen.
them as they spoke, and they sent a letter to the advisor afterwards, thanking them profusely, specifically for her and how kind she was, and her gentle suggestions on what to think about, never making them feel badly about their situation at all. I mean, they've done a great job building up assets.
They don't spend any money. The parents probably don't spend any money.
That's correct.
You've seen these clients,
of course,
100 week.
We have them on the show all the time.
Yes. Well, thank you, Vicki. It's
always a pleasure.
And they're not easy subjects to talk about.
No, they're
oftentimes.
very personal.
Particularly, you get
Yeah.
a really strong parent that's very private and it's none of your business. Go out and create your own life for yourself and all that. And
Yeah, but it makes sense to have the conversations. And if you did nothing other than actually take all those accounts and move them into a single brokerage account, if you did nothing other than that,
that would be a big.
that would be a great start.
Yeah,
But
that's absolutely right.
Redoing the
but-
trust is super important, though, too.
Oh,
'cause
that's
that
correct. That's
bypass.
correct.
Yeah,
Correct,
that,
correct,
that
correct.
was very important.
yes,
So if
yeah.
you find yourself or your parents in that situation, it's a good idea to get some help.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for taking some time to join us, Victoria, and Happy New Year to you.
Yes, Happy New Year. Thank
All
you
right,
both.
thanks, Vicki.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye.